Here's my twist on the come follow me topic, prepare for God's law. And the angle that I came at it was, if you understand and you love God's law, then that's how you prepare for it, right? So as you understand why the law is there, I'm a why person, and then you love why it's there, then it's easier to be prepared for more, which is kind of the idea of prepare for God's law. The early saints were given step by step things to do to prepare them for the next law, to prepare them for the next step, and so they gained their knowledge and their the doctrine the same way that anybody would, line upon line, precept on precept, as they were ready and prepared. And so for us too, and I just remember on my mission, it was in the gospel principles class, which is the class that new members sit in and kind of learn the basics of the gospel. And I had the like, oh, I already know this kind of a attitude. And so I just said a little prayer that I would learn something, because the topic was quite elementary, I thought, and it was being taught by somebody who in my young mind didn't know as much as me, because when I 21 I knew everything.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
So I was sitting there and learning about Adam and Eve, and the thought came to me, they were talking about the two commandments that seem conflicting: multiply and replenish, but don't eat the fruit. And you can't multiply and replenish unless you eat the fruit. And I just thought, that why? And it wasn't anything that was said in the lesson. It was something that the Spirit spoke to my heart, and it said, because God will never give a commandment that will bring sadness and death. His commandments are only for our benefit, for our happiness, for our salvation. And it was just like this huge light bulb and this huge life-changing experience for me, because then I look at the commandments and I go, okay, why? How is this for my happiness? How is this for my salvation? And it totally changed the way that I saw the commandments. I think that we grow up with rules and restrictions and commandments and these things that seem to take away our freedoms and limit us. And I am totally that person. My mom and I conflicted in my teenage years because she had so many restrictions on me. I'm like, if you would just trust me, I was
I know.
totally
Doesn't
that
every
teenager.
teenager say that? Trust me, trust me.
Yeah, if you would
Give me a
just,
reason to trust you.
yeah, exactly. Um, but I felt restricted, and I didn't want, anyway. I didn't like a curfew and all of these things that I didn't understand the purpose behind the rules. And when I found out the purpose behind God's law, or behind God's commandments, that this sole purpose is for my benefit. He's not trying to restrict us or take away our freedoms or all of them. All of them. God cannot and will not give a commandment that will bring sadness and death. And it showed in the Garden of Eden. He would not and could not give him a commandment to eat of the fruit when the byproduct of that was that they would have trials, tribulations, and eventually death. That to me is that's it. Like, that's the pinnacle for me on this lesson, is how do we prepare for God's law? Know that his law is for you, and it's only for your benefit.
I love that. I love that. So let's get into some of the ways that we're teaching our kids about this, because I love that you have these fun little activities for both the kids and the youth. Should we start with the kids first?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a little throwback for mom too, because I put in house rules.
Yeah. Love it.
Yes. So they just have a little maze kind of thing that has what the house rule is and also what the commandment is. And then it leads to being clean, safe, and happy, which is kind of the three things that I narrowed most of the commandments and rules down to. Why do we have them? To be clean, safe, and happy. So then they have the little maze that they can go from the house rule of eat in the kitchen. Where does that go? Is it clean, safe, or happy? Be kind to your siblings. Hold mom's hand when you're crossing the road. And then the commandments, the examples that I have is don't drink or smoke, repent and be grateful. And where do those, are those for clean, safe, or happy? And then they just have a little maze that kind of
And I love it. They have like these little winding, almost like these little twisty
doodle.
rope arrow things where, they can kind of follow the little arrow, or they can even use it with their little crayon or their pencil and then trace where it's going to land them. So
Yeah,
like the eat in the kitchen it winds around, but eventually it ends up at the clean one, so they can stay clean, or holding mom's hand is going to wind around to the safe section,
yeah,
that kind of a
yeah,
thing.
yeah. It's very fun. It also teaches some of those motor skills and eye concentration skills and things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my kids love this kind of stuff. They're going to love this one so much. Yeah.
nice.
So good.
Yeah, that one's a fun one.
Well, and I like it too because I like that you can have this so you can explain the lesson a little bit. And then the little ones can kind of be doing I mean, especially in my family where I have the older kids and the little kids. So it's great to have something that my little ones can be doing while we're getting a little bit deeper with the big kids. And I still want my little kids there because I know they soak up things that I don't even realize.
Yeah.
So, but they can just be kind of doing their tracing and their coloring, and then we can get into a little deeper with the big kids. So let's talk about those teens a little bit.
Yes, because I am a Y person, this activity,
Which is perfect for those
yeah,
teens.
yes,
And a lot
yeah,
of everybody. I mean, we're all can be white people all through our lives, but I feel like
yeah,
this is applied in our home even more the older that the kids get.
yeah. For sure. This is a good activity actually for adults too, just to kind of, we have what I will refer to as the Sunday school answer, right? Why do we keep the Sabbath day holy? Because like so our first why is to have a day to take the sacrament and worship God. And then so this activity is to push like the next step, but why? So i I kind of relate to the kid who
But why?
says,
But why?
but why? But why? And you give an answer and they say why, and you give an answer and they say why, until you have no more answers left. You got to the root of the why. And this is what this activity is teaching: is get to the root of the why. Get to where you can see that it's for your benefit, that this commandment is not to restrict or to you know God's not practicing unrighteous dominion over you by trying to force you to do this. How get down to the root why. So just as an example, I on the page I did a couple of examples. One was keep the Sabbath day holy, and it's to have a day to take the sacrament and worship God. But why? To have a day that is different from the rest of the week. But why? To have a day when you don't need to think of the things of the world. But why? To rest and be rejuvenated mentally, physically, and spiritually. But why? To remember our eternal goals, repent, and recommit. But why? To progress and be happy.
I love that.
So I mean, and everybody's but why is going to be different. That's my but why on the Sabbath day. And so then the same thing I have the do's on one side and the don'ts on the other side. So the other side, don't smoke or drink alcohol, and it starts with but why, but then it says then what. So you're following like, if I do this, then what happens, instead of the why of anyway,
You're
it's
looking more at your consequences of
correct.
kind of the road of consequence.
Yeah. Like what would happen if you did this? And so that and of course my example is my example, right? It is a little, and I'll read it to you because it is a little bit ridiculous. I'll be honest, but this is my but why. This is my but why on why not to drink or smoke. But why it can create an addiction and it's not good for my body. Then what? Then what, as in if I drink or smoke? Then what? It could lead to other drugs and addictions. Then what? I could spend all my money on addictions. Then what? I would lie, cheat, and steal for my addictions. Then what? I would no longer be in control. Then what? I would be in bondage to my addiction, creating a dependency that would control my choices. Um, and that's my why not start this? Why is this in place? What could happen if I went down that road? So
I think
that's
it's so good to teach our kids to look at long term from little choices too. I think that's just great for that.
Yeah. Yeah. To look at not just this choice that's in front of us right now, but what does that lead to?
Mhm.
And for me to not be able to have control, I mean, I have my little chocolate addictions, but even that, or if I have a game on my phone, to me, it's any addiction. If there's a game on my phone that I have to play every day and I can't go to sleep until I get on my phone and play it, I will delete it from my phone. Like, just the idea of addiction, it's not drinking or smoking. The drinking and smoking is a highly addictive thing, but the commandment is there because of addiction, to have control and to be able to make choices without having these pulls, and these things that are controlling your choices. And so for me, it's the addiction. Why don't I do this? And even chocolate, like I'm working on weaning off the chocolate. It was a good addiction when I
It got us through for a while, but it's
yes,
becoming a little too
yes.
dependent.
It was a great help when I needed it, and now I don't need it anymore, and so I need to get rid of the addiction. But it can be Diet Coke, it could be any of these things that you're dependent on. Anyway, I mean, that's off of the topic of God's law, but that's kind of how I get to like the but why and then what's is why is this law for me? So that's God's law and learning to prepare for God's law. Learn why it's there and how it applies for you.
Love it.